Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kupijana Vallabha Girivaradari Kupijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Asa Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Imanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. So does anybody know where Tyler is? No? All right. So yesterday was Rama Akadashi, which is a special Akadashi. Of course, every Akadashi is special, but this Akadashi was extra special because it was the particular Akadashi in which Srila Prabhupada finished translating and commenting on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So before we get into the Srimad Bhagavatam, I'll just read these concluding words that he wrote on that particular day, this Rama Akadashi, which was yesterday. It's interesting here in this particular Chaitanya, we need Dravida Prabhu here, he's not here, but in this particular Chaitanya Charitamrita that I'm reading from, it's listed as Rama Akadashi, and on the BBT calendar it's Rama Akadashi, so we got to see which one's right. It's Rama, so this is wrong in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. All right. Well, need to fix. Om Jnanativadandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanamaditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kaditavachalam Pangam Langayate Gadim Yakipatam Ham Vande Shri Gurunditaranam Pancha Kalpadurubhisha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So if anybody wants to read along where it's the very end of Antya Lila of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Antya Lila has 20 chapters, so it's the concluding words. Or you could just listen. Today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Chaitanya era, 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama Akadashi, we have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj. Prabhupada. My beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend, although according to material vision, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, passed away from this material world on the last day of December 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words, and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not, but Vani continues to exist eternally. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani and not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna was personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. So Srila Prabhupada bringing up many important points here, and so we could meditate and discuss those a little. So he refers to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as his eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. So when us, as none of us here are direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada, we're grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So in relating to Srila Prabhupada, in relating to our spiritual master, we, of course, this principle of the spiritual master being eternal spiritual master, most devotees may think like that, okay? And also, most devotees may think, okay, this is my guide. We hope, right? That the disciples, grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada who are getting initiated by Srila Prabhupada's disciples are now others. We hope that they accept their spiritual master as their guide. I mean, what's the use of having a spiritual master if we don't accept him as our guide? Which is, it seems like a basic point, but how much, we could ask ourselves, how much do we actually fully accept our spiritual master as our guide? And how much are we just depending on our own intelligence to come up with particular conclusions on how to navigate in this world? So it's not, we could say, it's not automatic that, okay, I have a spiritual master, and that, or a disciple has a spiritual master, and that means automatically they accept him as a guide, although they should fully. But a point that maybe some don't think about so much. Of course, I'm not in everybody's minds. Good, because that would be weird to be in everybody's minds. I have my own mind to deal with, so anyways. So, but a lot of people may not think of the spiritual master as their friend, because you think, oh, very, awe and reverence and respect and veneration, and how can this person be my friend, right? The spiritual master. But Srila Prabhupada points out here that he regards Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as his friend, and the spiritual master is our friend. So we should be honest, we should be open, we should be clear in our communication with our friend, our friends. That's what it means to be a friend. Of course, in Kali Yuga, everything is completely backwards. So it's hard to have any type of substantial, pure, wholesome relationships in such a messed up place. But we should try to understand that to have a friend means to be open, not to be holding anything back. And in this way, we could actually make spiritual progress if we're very honest, if we're very open in our communication with our spiritual masters as our friends, and also other devotees. Or else, there's no real, ultimately speaking, there's no real substantial progress, or it'll be very difficult, slow. So yes, the spiritual masters are eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. And as Prabhupada points out here, that from material vision, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he left. But Srila Prabhupada saying that I always felt myself in his association, specifically by his Vani instructions. And Prabhupada points out about in relation to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, right, not exactly 5,000 years ago, but around 5,000 years ago. And it's continuing now. So we could get the association of Krishna in the form of instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. So similarly with the spiritual master, the main thing is to follow the instructions. You can't say, oh, I love my guru, but I don't follow his instructions. So we have to follow the instructions, and that's the test of real affection for him. Whereas Prabhupada would give the example of a bug. So a bug may be very close, right? It's right here on our arm, but how much pleasure is it giving to a particular person if it's just biting? So similarly, a person may be physically in close physical proximity to the spiritual master, but they could be 1,000,000 miles away, just like in this class right now. Again, I don't know what's going on in people's minds, but theoretically, people could be 1,000,000 miles away. And it could just be like, wah, 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 this person's just, and they're not tuning in to what I'm saying, which, whatever, but it would be, so so to really associate means to open ourselves up for transformation. That's what it means to try to be a devotee, to try to be receptive to change. We have to be receptive to wanting to be changed, or having a transformation. Or else there's no, I mean, it's not, we're not fully engaged in the process if we're not trying to be receptive. So in this connection, we may call, so this is the next paragraph, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, sometime in the year 1922. Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sridham Mayapur to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math. So this was after his billion, I think it was billion, right, chanting of the holy names. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to Calcutta to start the Gaudiya Math. So right after that he met Prabhupada, or Srila Prabhupada. He was sitting in a house at Altadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Mulak, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time I was one of the managers of Dr. Bose's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man, addicted to Gandhi's movement and dressed in khadi. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries. Because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi's, I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on this subject, but at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. I was also convinced that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. So Srila Prabhupada was, when he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was extremely inspired, right? He visited with Narendra Mulak, as Prabhupada's mentioning here, and they went up to the rooftop of the Gaudiya Math there in Calcutta, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was there with some followers, some disciples, speaking. And then Srila Prabhupada and Narendra Mulak offered their obeisances, as they knew was the etiquette, standard to, when one sees a sannyasi, to offer obeisances, which is another thing to note, and which is important. Whenever we see a sannyasi, it's good to offer obeisances. Prabhupada even says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, even when we see impersonalist sannyasis, offer obeisances. What to speak of Vaishnava sannyasis, to offer obeisances as a form of respect. So they did that, and then upon getting up, the first words Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said to them was, "You two are young, educated men. Why don't you spread the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the English-speaking world throughout the world?" So, and as Srila Prabhupada mentions, there was a little bit of argument there, because Prabhupada was of course, nationalist. Of course, he was pure devotee, and this is some, but due to the situation in India, British being in control of India, and Mahatma Gandhi and his followers protesting, the British rule and so on, Srila Prabhupada joined that, and they would boycott anything British, right? Which one of the signs of boycotting was they'd make their own cloth, right? Khadi. That's what Prabhupada says, wearing khadi cloth. So, anyways, so there's a bit of a argument there, Prabhupada says, and he says that he was defeated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the sense that, of course, it'd be amazing to have that recording, right? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada speaking, but in the sense that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that this is all temporary. All this, who's ruling, subjugation, and he said that Krishna consciousness is so urgent it cannot wait. Kitchen religion. So urgent it cannot wait. We have to spread Krishna consciousness. So he was convinced. But he said that due to his particular situation, he was a householder. And as a householder, of course, one can preach Krishna consciousness, but practically it's more difficult in most cases. So Srila Prabhupada was facing the difficulty of dealing with his wife and his children and having to maintain, right? It's a lot of energy, actually. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950, when retired from family life as a vanaprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath Puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. In reply, he wrote me a letter dated 13th December 1936, ordering me in the same way to preach in English the call of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as I heard it from him. After he passed away, I started the fortnightly magazine Back to Godhead sometime in 1944 and tried to spread the call of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through this magazine. After I took sannyas, a well-wishing friend suggested that I write books instead of magazines. Magazines, he said, might be thrown away, but books remain perpetually. So Prabhupada heard this from a well-wishing friend. And as I remember in the Lilamrita, it wasn't like a close friend. It was just somebody, And they said, oh, Swamiji, you should write books instead of these magazines. Of course, Prabhupada continued both, but then he started the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is another good lesson for us, that some people may advise us in certain ways. And it may be this person, that person, this person, that. We should try to be receptive that, hey, this may be some type of sign, right? Of course. So then I attempted to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Before that, when I was a householder, I had written on Srimad Bhagavad Gita and had completed about 1,100 pages. But somehow or other, the manuscript was stolen. So it was stolen in India. And then, when Srila Prabhupada went to New York, it was also stolen, right? His typewriter and manuscript was also twice. Okay. In any case, when I had published Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto in 3 volumes in India, I thought of going to the USA. By the mercy of His Divine Grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17th, 1965. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, a summary, and many others. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and publish it in an elaborate version. In his leisure time and later life, His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, would simply read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. He used to say that there would be a time when foreigners would learn the Bengali language to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The work on this translation began about 18 months ago. Now, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it is finished. In this connection, I have to thank my American disciples, especially Srimad Pradyumna Das Adhikari, Srimad Nitya Das Adhikari, Srimad Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, and many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, and publishing all these literatures. I think that His Divine Grace, so this is the second to last paragraph. I think that His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, has always seen my activities and guided me within my heart by His words. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye, spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His Paramatma feature is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there is any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His Divine Grace. Certainly, if His Divine Grace were physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. But even though He is not physically present, I am confident that He is very much pleased by the work of translation. He is very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it says in his later life, he would read this book on his leisure time. He said it's his favorite book. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is of course, can't just sum him up in a few words, but such an inconceivably amazing person to grace this planet in recent times. So for such a person, of such a high-level person, to say that this was his favorite book, that means the book's very important. It's extremely important. And therefore, as we were mentioning some time ago, about devotees having a plan to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam, read it, systematic plan, and to move on to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and to read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it's the real nectar, that we're looking for, actually, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if someone is slower to get to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or if somebody is just, I would say everybody should just really try to get to the Chaitanya Charitamrita and read it, even if whatever, they're slow or whatever, they should try to get to it and read it. But if someone was just to say, I'm really not a reader, I'm really not going to get to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, then fine. Grab your phone, grab some type of device, and listen to the audio book of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, or listen to some lectures of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Try to absorb the message of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which, in some ways, I don't know about the whole of ISKCON, right? I'm just here in my little, not my little, but my poor little consciousness, right? Frog in the well. But it is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. So, of course, Srila Prabhupada instituted the Srimad Bhagavatam classes daily, morning. But on the other hand, it is is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, ISKCON, right? Of course, we say the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but it is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. So to be familiar with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is extremely important. We can't neglect Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if we neglect Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then our spiritual life's very difficult. If we want it easy, then we better remember Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For those who remember Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very difficult things become easy. And those who don't remember Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very easy things become difficult. So, to be Krishna conscious, to spread Krishna consciousness, it may seem like a difficult task, but if we remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it will be easy. So, therefore, to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, or everybody has a spiritual master here practically, or aspiring spiritual master, or there's many devotees throughout the world speaking on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Devamrita Swami has some really nice lectures on the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, very elaborate, extensive, beautiful lectures, but should absorb that is important. All right, now, lastly, here it is. It is my wish, so Srila Prabhupada is saying, it is my wish, like my spiritual master, every day he listens to Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, this recording of, what's his name? Damodar. Prabhu. I've never met him, but he's in New Vrindavan apparently. He's got a good voice, but... So my spiritual master listens every day, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. So the beautiful pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we have time when we're taking our lunch, or when we're taking our walk, or when we're, getting ready in the morning. We're driving out to Sankirtan, just like Brigupati Prabhu every day. When I used to go, I spent some time with him in LA. We were distributing books. He was distributing books. I was kind of like, I distributed a few books. But he, every day, going there and coming back, he listened to Srila Prabhupada lecture. So, to try to max out our opportunity to hear. So this is Srila Prabhupada's wish here. It is my wish that devotees of Lord Chaitanya, so it means all of us, all over the world, even in San Diego, enjoy this translation, so we could enjoy it. And I am glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples, and we could say that we could see this as Srila Prabhupada requesting us too as grand disciples. Right? I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully, so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures, such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, dated November 10th, 1974, at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. So we can enjoy it, right, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then also distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Nectar of Devotion, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Prabhupada wanted all devotees to have the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anybody who's initiated, they have to have it in their home. Prabhupada said any gentleman or lady should have it in their home, but what to speak of somebody who's initiated? They have to have it in their home. And I would say anybody who's aspiring for initiation, they have to have it in their home. So, and sometimes devotees give this argument. I don't think it's a good argument, but the argument is, well, I haven't finished the Bhagavad Gita, so I don't want to buy the Chaitanya Charitamrita and put it in my house. Well, you should put it in your house, no matter what. You should put it in your house immediately. like yesterday, whatever, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy and the mercy of the devotees, I'm a fallen soul, but I, by the mercy of them, two people took Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, 2 sets. So I was teaching the disciples course there, and somehow it came up, and I said, today is a special day. It's the day Prabhupada finished Chaitanya Charitamrita. So who has the Chaitanya Charitamrita? And some raised their hand, some didn't raise their hand. And I didn't try for everybody who didn't raise their hands, but I specifically targeted 2 persons, Michael and Ravi. Tejas. And one argument that Ravi told me later that was also in his mind, Michael presented in the class. He said, well, I haven't finished certain books, Bhagavad Gita and so on, so maybe I should wait. So what I told him was, I said, well, all right, look at it this way. Let's say you have $10,000 in the bank. Are you going to say that, okay, let me spend all this money, right, and then I'll endeavor to get more money to put into the bank? No. You're going to keep on putting them. It's not that you put $10,000 and, let me spend this and then I'll put more money in the bank. No, you're going to keep on putting money in the bank. That's what people do who have bank accounts and who are working. They keep on putting money in the bank. They don't cap it. If they could, they'd put a lot in there. So I said, similarly, to think, let me wait to get Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I said, it's a similar principle. You shouldn't wait. It's like the spiritual bank account, right? If you get a Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's going into your spiritual bank account. It's not that in the way of you putting money in your material bank account, you don't cap it. So similarly, you should try to do as much as possible. Put in your spiritual bank account. You should get the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like gold. You should get it. So we said, all right. And then Ravi said, all right too. And then he told me later that that's what he was thinking also. I'll get it later. But why get it later? If I was going to give you $1 million, would you tell me? Would you say, I'll get it from you later? No, you take it immediately. So anyways, if anybody tells that to you, and maybe if you didn't already have that idea in your mind, you could try to use that. I'll get it later. So anyways, yesterday was a very special day, Akadashi. It's the day of Srila Prabhupada finished the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so just thought I would read that for that occasion. So does anybody have any?
Hare Krishna?
Yes, please ask.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu. One of the statements made by Bhaktisiddhanta related to Srila Prabhupada is that he thought that Srila Prabhupada was a good listener.
Yes.
And the Vaishnava saying related to being a good listener is that if you are a good listener, to be a good listener can enable you in relation to making you a good, a successful preacher.
Yes.
And the proof that it is as such is that we are today speaking about the presentation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita made by Srila Prabhupada, and this presentation made by Srila Prabhupada is a very excellent proof of how Srila Prabhupada became a good preacher.
Yes.
So Prabhu, my question is, why is it that to be a good listener makes me a good preacher?
Okay. So first it's Shravanam, Kirtanam, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam. Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmana, Vedanam. So Shravanam, to hear, right? So that's how it all starts. We hear. We come to the temple for the first time. People say, oh, so many things, right? Load us up with so much information. So we're hearing. And then from that, we get inspired, right? So, and we start practicing. We start chanting, right, ourselves. But in relation to scripture or shastra, because when we say, okay, preach or teach, what are we referring to? We're referring to repeating the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and other books. So in order to properly repeat them, we have to hear them properly. Just like, that game, telephone game, right? I was at a devotee's house, and this devotee, we did some. He was the one leading the whole gathering, and we did this. Okay, break up into groups, so 5 groups. And then there was like 4 people in our group, so then there was one message, right? Everybody had different messages. Each group had a different message. So then I would say something in somebody's ear, then they would say something, just in a small group. And amazingly enough, every single group, what happened was that the original message that was stated in every single group, like a leader of the group, said, okay, what did your group say, And the person would repeat the conclusion of the statements, right? And it was just completely off. It was just like, it was completely wrong. Every single group was like that. And then we compared it to what the original statement was. That's just like amazing. Because there's like 4 people. I mean, you'd think it would, or a room of people. You think 10 people could, repeat something. So it's not so easy to repeat. But if we hear properly, then we can repeat. But what does it mean to hear properly? It means we have to be receptive to the message, right? And that's what Srila Prabhupada was. He was very receptive to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he was eager to hear. Because if we're not eager, then we won't be receptive. Our minds will be going other places if we're not eager to hear. So in the pastimes of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada was I think it was in Vrindavan, on a Raj Mandala Parikrama with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And devotees announced that, okay, there's a group going to see this deity of Krishna. So you could go there, or you could hear Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So many people, they went, to see that deity. But Srila Prabhupada, he retells that. He said, why am I going to go see the deity? So what am I going to see? He said, better let me hear Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he just sat there and he was just listening. Although he said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's language was so high, even his Bengali, it wasn't just his English, because if you read, like, for example, Brahma Samhita, very high English, but even his Bengali was extremely. So Prabhupada said sometimes he wouldn't exactly. But then later, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur visited Allahabad, and Srila Prabhupada was there was an idea that Prabhupada would be initiative at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, first and second. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw him, young Srila Prabhupada, and he said, yes, I will initiate him. I said, I've marked him. He likes to hear. So yeah, we have to like to hear. We have to be eager to hear. We have to be enthusiastic, right? Those who have life can hear. And those who have life can also repeat. So it's important, because without it, what will we repeat if we don't hear? So therefore, filling our minds with the messages of Krishna is important, because, right, what comes in So, so anyways, I hope that kind of...
Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much again. Wonderful answer to my question.
All right,
Hare
thank you.
Krishna.
Is there any
Hare
other?
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you for such a nice class, Prabhu, and thank you for distributing Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very inspiring to me, and thank you for giving me Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's very nice. I'm reading it because you gave me, and when I also told you that I'll take it later, and you gave me, so I appreciate so much.
And you're reading, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay,
I'm
good.
in the middle, Madhya Lila.
All right, good. She
So
has it
thank
in,
you.
what's the language?
Gujarati.
Yeah, Gujarati. So,
It's really nice, so I can understand better, and
good.
I really appreciate so much. And I told my friend to get it from India. She speaks Marathi, so she's going to get it from India. I think she got it already.
Oh, okay. All right, nice. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And when Prabhu says hearing, so my Guru Maharaj says, whatever goes in your ear, it amplifies and it goes into your heart. So we should be careful what we hear, and then it amplifies so many times. So
Yeah.
thank you for nice class. Hare
All right,
Krishna.
thank you. All right, any last in-house? Oh, all right. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.